I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks so much, and thank you for that flag. That makes it a lot more sensible. Okay, and so the first item that we have to attend to on our agenda is our annual organization with our oath of office. And I am not actually, I don't have that in front of me, and I don't, and I apologize. However, I think that, are the agenda items reversed? Because don't we elect our new officers and then they take the oath of office? Is that right? Can anybody help me out? Heidi, what do you think? You think so?
I'm on mute. I apologize.
Okay.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so let's swap those two agenda items, and we will first do the nomination and election of officers. So, do we have any nominations for the office of Secretary of the Board?
Yes, we do. I would like to nominate Godfrey Azima. And first of all, good evening, everyone. Godfrey has served well in his current role as secretary and has worked collaboratively with myself as vice chair and Sarah as chair. I believe Godfrey's a team player. He works well with other board members as well as central office staff. Godfrey serves on several committees, including the executive committee, negotiations and personnel, curriculum instruction, as well as policy. I believe he brings his understanding and passion to our equity work. Godfrey has a unique skill set that will suit him well to continue as secretary on the executive committee of the Board of Education of Norwalk. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Heidi. Are there any further nominations for the position of Secretary of the Board? Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Okay. All in favor of electing Godfrey Azima to the position of Secretary of the Board? Aye.
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 Any oh, thanks, Shrell. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, congratulations, Godfrey. You have been unanimously elected to the position of Secretary of the Board. Are there any nominations? Yes, applause for sure. Are there any nominations for the position of Vice Chair of the Board? I have one. I would like to nominate Diana Carpio for the position of Vice Chair of the Board. Since she has been on the board, I have been consistently impressed with her thoughtfulness and with her diligence and how methodical she has been in her approach to the work of being on the board. She also has a bachelor's in finance, which is very, very helpful to us as we move into budget season. She has experience teaching. She also has experience working her way up through the entire system of everything in terms of Norwalk Public Schools. She has been on PTOs and PTAs and SGCs. She has done significant fundraising, and during this entire pandemic, she has been organizing for Norwalk Mutual Aid and helping distribute food and necessities to people in need in our community. So her dedication to improving the lives of people in our community is evident, and I think she is an excellent choice for the position of Vice Chair. Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? All in favor of electing Diana Carpio to the position of Vice Chair of the Board of Education? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Diana. You have been unanimously elected to the position of Vice Chair of the Board of Education.
Thank you.
Okey-doke. Are there any nominations for the position of chair?
Yeah. I would like to make a nomination.
Go ahead.
Great. I'd like to nominate Colin Hostin for the position of chairman of the Board of Education. Colin has been an incredible colleague this year, very calm and diplomatic and inclusive in his work habits. He is a writer, a teacher, and an editor with a master's in fine arts in creative writing and a master's in publishing, with a diverse professional background that includes digital media production and children's book publishing. He's also a dedicated public servant. In addition to his service on the board, he spent a year on the Common Council and a year on the Human Relations Commissions. He has been an incredible volunteer in the community. He serves as the vice president of the board of directors of the Triangle Community Center. He served on the board of directors for the Village Creek Homeowners Association, as well as the Rowayton Woods Homeowners Association, and has shown great leadership there. In addition to that, he is a published author of children's books and brings a wonderful lens of joy in literature to the work that we do. So I'm proud to nominate Colin to chair the board this year.
Awesome. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Any other nominations for the position of chair? Any other nominations for the position of chair? All in favor of electing Colin Hostin to the position of chair of the Norwalk Board of Education? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yes.
One opposed. Any abstentions? Congratulations, Colin. You are the new chair of the Board of Education, and I am very, very happy to pass the torch over to you. So, that being the case, I believe now that we are going to have the oath of office administered to you, and at that point you can take over the meeting. So I actually don't recall how this works, funnily enough. Heidi, do you remember?
I don't think we have an oath of office when,
Yeah.
it's only when somebody's elected in.
You know, I noticed that too on the agenda, and I wish I'd said something earlier, but yeah, that's usually when you're in as a new board member coming in. So
Okay.
normally, Sarah, we would switch places, but we can't, you know, we're all Zoom now, right? So we're kind of where we are, but you're correct in saying that then Colin would now facilitate or actually start with the agenda, the next item on the agenda as our new chair.
Take it away, Mr. Chair. That's all you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah and Heidi, for getting us through what's been a challenging year in many ways. And even without an oath in office, an official one, I really appreciate the confidence of my fellow board members, and I do pledge to serve in this role to the best of my ability, with the best of our learning community in mind. And so, yes, let's take it away with the rest of this meeting, going on to the spotlight.
And for today, the National Honor Society 2021. The board is pleased to honor the 2021 National Honor Society members of Brian McMahon High School, Center for Global Studies, Norwalk High School, and P-TECH. The National Honor Society is the nation's premier organization established to recognize outstanding high school students. More than just an honor roll, the National Honor Society serves to recognize those students who have demonstrated excellence in the areas of scholarship, service, leadership, and character. These characteristics have been associated with membership in the organization since its beginning in 1921. Community service work, both in groups as well as on an individual basis, remains a central pillar of National Honor Society membership. During this challenging time, this year's honor students are finding unique ways to serve the community. The Brian McMahon National Honor Society chapter is made up of 70 members. These McMahon students will provide 15 hours of community service to their chosen project, including virtual tutoring. Chapter members will also focus on donating money and time to in-school projects. By the end of the year, this chapter will have 1,050 hours of community service and given over $1,000 to charitable organizations. The Center for Global Studies chapter of the National Honor Society welcomed 20 juniors last year to become the very first members of the CGS chapter. The newly formed chapter is proud to induct members who serve as role models for other students and who will serve as leaders within our community. Student members volunteer their time tutoring with peers and helping to organize potluck dinners and other school activities. The Kevin M. Hite chapter of the National Honor Society at Norwalk High School has 25 active members. These students submit a minimum of 4 community service hours each month. The chapter continues to work with the Sister City Project, having raised over $10,000 in the past 4 years, $10,000 in the past 4 years. This year, members have implemented a virtual peer tutoring program for those in the NHS community. This year marks the 25th year for the Kevin M. Hite Scholarship Fund, named after 1996 valedictorian Kevin Hite. Members plan to implement 2 special service projects to celebrate his legacy, one at the Norwalk Soup Kitchen and the other called Kevin's Day of Service. In any event I mispronounced Kevin's last name, please chime in and correct me, anyone. The PTEC Norwalk National Honor Society, the Ryan Stelly chapter, is a newly formed chapter. Membership has been earned through the effective demonstration of the 4 qualities that serve as standards for the National Honor Society. Chapter members kicked off the year by working on a reading library for elementary school age children. Students are building a library and looking to implement a pilot with a nearby elementary school. Future projects may also include bringing cheer and kindness to elderly care facilities in Norwalk. Members of the National Honor Society demonstrate leadership by example, consistent academic excellence, and most importantly, honorable character. On behalf of the entire Board of Education, we congratulate the members of the Brian McMahon National Honor Society chapter, the Center for Global Studies chapter of the National Honor Society, the Kevin M. Hite chapter of the National Honor Society at Norwalk High School, and the PTEC Norwalk National Honor Society, Ryan Stelly chapter. We celebrate the accomplishments of these students and wish them all the best for their future.
Thank you, Godfrey. And thank you to our National Honor Society students. And moving on, next on the agenda is public comments. I know we did get a couple emailed comments, but Ralph, just we should double check if is there anybody here tonight who wishes to speak?
Yes, Chair. Actually, Brenda's going to handle the public comments for tonight, though. So there are a few people. Yes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I think Joe Gianderco is the first on the list. Joe, you can unmute and begin your remarks and state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes as usual.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's the first time doing it this way. I wish we were all in person, but good evening. Joe Gianderco, 9 Mott Avenue. Good evening, members of the Board of Education and Dr. Estrella. Tonight, you have an important vote on the plans for the new Norwalk High School building in front of you. The result of this vote will impact several schools, countless students, and taxpayers for decades to come. With that in mind, I would like to urge you to make sure that you have completely engaged the community that is going to use the space, both Norwalk High and PTEC. As teachers and administrators in these buildings will tell you, they have a much better sense of the school needs, desires, and functionality than some others who have been involved in this project. I suggest that you put in place a standing committee of administrators, teachers, and parents, along with students, that will meet throughout the construction of the building to ensure nothing is overlooked or changed without discussion. I believe this committee is something similar. I believe something similar is being planned for Cranberry. I also believe that this standing committee would help to ensure that some of the issues that have occurred at the PONUS project, which was recently completed, do not repeat themselves. For example, the PONUS building suffers from several major issues impacting teachers and their students. The construction of only one bathroom for all 1st through 5th graders is very problematic. In fact, the staff have been forced to sacrifice a staff bathroom in order to cut down the wait time for use for their students. Additionally, classrooms for the middle school portion of the building are undersized and extremely cramped and will be extremely cramped in a post-COVID world. In many instances, there is barely enough room to socially distance today. Finally, during this process, 6 classrooms were eliminated, and we now have 6 teachers on carts. The entire world language department and 2 of our tier 2 intervention specialists have no classrooms and are forced to travel each period throughout the day. This does have an impact on the type of instruction that can be provided to our students. Ultimately, I believe that a small committee of stakeholders overseeing a project will ensure that the construction project itself runs smoothly and generates better results. Teachers and various stakeholders are in a better position to see how the plans will actually work based upon their experience in the actual school environment. So again, I simply ask that we keep a committee to ensure that we don't have some of these issues that get overlooked when there's a change order or a small subtle change somewhere along the construction, because what we see in the Jefferson portion of PONUS is very, very disheartening and troublesome. So thank you for your time. Congratulations to our new officers. I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you again.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you. We have one other person that may or may not want to talk. Robert, if you are interested in speaking, you can unmute yourself and speak now. Okay, I think we're all set then. Colin, I know you have the 2 emailed ones as well. That's the folks who are in the queue in terms of participants.
Yes, and I will read those into the record right now. The first comes from Ileana Zuniga, who writes, please consider delaying the voting of item number 5 of the agenda, the approval of the revised design specs for Norwalk High School and PTEC. There has not been proper representation from PTEC, and we would like to have an opportunity to voice our concerns before this gets voted on. I am a member of PTEC's SGC and would really appreciate it if this could be postponed to a later time. Thank you, Ileana. And the second comes from Beth Ann Carlag, who writes, I am a PTEC SGC parent and want to ask that the design specs for the new high school be tabled, as PTEC was not included in any discussions to alter specs in classrooms and in the school in general. Thank you. And my thanks to all our public commenters. Clearly that's going to be something on the agenda for discussion tonight. And I think that we will have a lot more information to share with the public about that. But first, I want to go to Dr. Estrella for the superintendent's report. Dr. E.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to all the new executive committee members. I want to start the evening by talking a little bit about the COVID-19 contact tracing process before I go into the agenda items, because I know that the community has voiced concern about the process and how we engage in contact tracing, especially when there's a second point of contact. So we've asked Joanne Malinowski to join us to provide some insight for the community around the contact tracing process and the process around second exposure, and to support parents to have clarity, because there's been some questions about, well, if I have a child that's been asked to quarantine, why doesn't the other child need to quarantine as well? So I think it would be important just to bring some insight around that piece, because I know a lot of parents have expressed concern around this. And I think providing clarity will help all of us. So Joanne Malinowski, can you please provide some insight on the contact tracing process and second exposure, please?
Certainly, Dr. Estrella. Congratulations to all the new board members also. I look forward to working with all of you. Regarding contact tracing, we are doing this 7 days a week, my Department of School Health Services, and we work very closely with the Department of Health to try and keep all of our students and our staff safe. In order for this whole process to begin, we need to have confirmation of a positive case. And once we have that, then we look at who the child has been exposed to, or the staff member, whoever it might be, whether it's on a bus, after school, sports, whatever it may be. And then we take a look at all of that and go by date, go by symptoms. It's not that simple when you're actually doing it. And then we ask people to quarantine. So I want to make something perfectly clear about quarantine. When we by the way, call every parent, every family, when that person has a student that needs to be quarantined, so that if they have questions, they can ask us questions. And there are nurses and school health aides that are making these phone calls 7 days a week. So we can answer your questions when we have that particular parent on the line. The other thing is when you have a student that is positive, that person needs to isolate in a separate area of the home. If there are other children, siblings, or mom and dad or grandma and grandpa that live in the house, or aunt or uncle, those students need to quarantine. If the child, those people in the house need to quarantine if that student is positive, okay? So now we have a student that's positive. We look at the school and we decide who that child was in contact with. Sometimes it can go up to a few days ahead of time when that child was in school. Say the child was there at 11:10, for example. We may go back 2 days. It just depends on the actual case of the symptomology and also the test result when the child was tested. So we don't trace every single person. It just depends on dates, and dates are very, very important. So if a student was told that they have to quarantine, now they have siblings or other people that live in their household, they do not have to quarantine with that child. That child is not positive, okay? That child was exposed to somebody who was positive. So that person has to quarantine, but the rest of the people in the household do not have to quarantine. So you may have one student that has to quarantine that goes to one school, and you may have another student in a high school, and you say, well, how come my older kid doesn't have to? Well, because they were not directly exposed to the positive person. That's the issue right there. So everybody else can go on about their business for 14 days. If somebody becomes positive, that child who was quarantined, that's why we say 14 days. You cannot test out of a quarantine. The reason being, you may say, oh, I was exposed 3 days ago and I just went for a PCR test, so I don't have to quarantine anymore. Wrong answer. You still have to complete the 14-day time, because that's the way the RNA virus, which is responsible for COVID-19, replicates. So you can be negative on day 2, negative on day 5, negative on day 7, negative on day 12. Day 13 or day 14, you turn positive. Everybody's immune system is different. So, or you may never turn positive, and that's very good. Then after 14 days, on the 15th day, you're out of quarantine and you have no issues. If in the meantime, if anybody in that household, if that child that's quarantined turns positive, that's a different set of circumstances, because now everybody from that day that the student has symptoms or has tested and became positive needs quarantine. The other people in the household need to quarantine at that point. And of course you would, call your physician your provider and get testing and go further with an evaluation. So that's the way quarantine and isolation is. I don't want to confuse you even more, but if somebody does turn positive, it's a different set of circumstances. So it would be 10 days for the initial person. After 10 to 15 days, it depends on whether or not they have symptoms, and that's a doctor question, and if they're symptomatic. The other people that are in the household may end up having to quarantine for another 14 days. So sometimes it ends up being 24 days. But we can actually help you with that if you have questions about that. We start with the initial phone call of quarantine. And I have to tell you, we have people quarantining, and we have not had many people turn positive. As long as you stay home, that means no play dates, no going out, no going to the grocery store. The only place you can go is actually to go for a test or see your provider. But any other, play dates or going outside and playing around with other kids or going to dance, going to karate, no, you can't do that in quarantine. You cannot. So I don't know what other information you may need about exposure control. That's what we're really trying to do in the schools. And we do it every day. We get a positive case from the health department, or sometimes parents have been wonderful in calling their school nurse and letting the school nurse know that their child is positive, or somebody in their household has turned positive and their child has to quarantine because these kids are not on remote learning, or they may be on remote, it all depends. So we find out that way also. In order for us to contact trace, we need to have a positive case. It can't be presumed positive. It has to be a positive case. And we have done all kinds of contact tracing with field hockey teams, basketball, different systems because of the ball games with athletics, between Ridgefield and Norwalk. And then we also, All Saints is also part of our system. So we work very closely with them as well. So I think we have it pretty much covered.
Thank you, Ms. Malinowski. Any questions from the board in reference to contact tracing and second second level exposures? Thank you very much.
I have a question. I have a comment, not a question. I just want to thank Ms. Malinowski and her staff, because I know that they're going around and not even just, a checklist. They'll let an organization know if they're in violation or if they need to do something. And I do know that the contact tracing is working. I had someone call me today to let me know that they had been exposed and they have to quarantine. So I just want to commend the staff for all that they're doing.
Thank you, Sherelle. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you too.
Sherelle sentiments.
I have a quick follow-up. In the event that a family's circumstances are such that the child cannot be distanced or separated from the rest of the family because of their living conditions, do we then ask siblings to quarantine? I know, many siblings share rooms. I know what you're saying is we need a positive case in order to quarantine, but my concern is that we are having significant delays in obtaining testing and in getting testing results right now, and that we could see further community spread if we aren't more proactive.
Barbara, you are correct as far as the testing. There can be a 2 to 3 day lag with the health department. Certainly not their fault, because when somebody is tested, that information goes to the state Department of Public Health, gets put into a database, and then that information goes to every health director in the state of Connecticut. So our health director, who's wonderful, Deanna Demore, looks at all of that information every day, and there may be, a couple of hundred people that she has to go through, whether she gets every positive and every negative. So you can imagine how many tests she has to go through. So at that point, we decide, we get the positive result, usually from the health department, but we really start, if a parent calls us and they have a copy of their result, we take that and we send that to the health department. We have no issue with that. So as far as having a student isolating, and that's where the key piece is. Say, for instance, you have a mom that has 2 children, right? And say one of them is a baby, and say the other one is 4 or 5 years old. It's going to be very, very difficult for that parent to isolate from those 2 children. So those 2 children really should be home with their parent. They should not be going to school. But if you have a high school student or a college student, I mean, you pretty much know to keep your distance if somebody is quarantining. If it's positive, remember, if you have a positive case in the house, everybody has to quarantine. Okay, that's the difference. But if you have a contact of a contact, then the rest of the people do not have to quarantine. Does that make sense?
And I just want to remind the board that we have been taking extra precaution even beyond the stipulations that the CDC and the state have set forward in terms of the individuals that we ask to quarantine. We're asking anyone that is in the room, even if they are beyond 6 feet from the person that is positive, to quarantine. So we are taking additional measures that go beyond the expectation of the CDC as well as the state. So we also have to keep that piece in mind, that we're still taking measures beyond the expected measures that the state has articulated to ensure that we keep everyone safe.
Dr. Estrella, I know that the schools are doing everything that they can, but Barbara, I'm going to take you as a step further, because we can't control and we don't know what goes on in people's homes. Just say, like, our family hugs a lot, and, like, you know, our natural inclination might be to hug, and like, oh my God, I forgot we can't do that. Like, nobody knows what's going on in the home. So I think the proactiveness might be until the person who was exposed gets a test that comes back negative, then maybe everybody should quarantine, or the siblings anyway should quarantine.
If the test is negative, or you mean?
I mean, if the test comes back positive. So just say I am exposed and I'm in a household with someone else who goes to school or goes to the same job as I. We just don't know. So then if the test does come back positive, you know, everybody has to quarantine. But I'm just thinking proactively, if 2 siblings are in the same home, maybe that person, the person who wasn't exposed should quarantine until the person who was exposed gets their test back. That's just.
No, I hear your concern. We discussed that with the Department of Health, and they feel that those additional measures are not necessary given the additional precautions that we are taking. We are already quarantining an enormous amount of individuals as an added precaution. So adding that additional layer will mean that we're unnecessarily quarantining an enormous number of individuals within a school or the system at large. But it's something that I will bring back to the Department of Health and continue to have the conversation and express the concerns brought forward from the board. But right now, that is not the recommendation of the Department of Health. And we're working really closely with them to set our metrics. On the same token, even with athletics, the CIAC has pushed winter sports to January 21st of 2021 at this point, which helps us given some of the concerns that we have around contact that are associated with athletics. So just wanted to provide that insight since we're talking about COVID.
Sherelle, may I just do a follow-up with that? Regarding testing, when someone is getting a test, if they're symptomatic, they really should wait for those pending results to go out, because you can turn positive. Once you get your result in 2 or 3 days, you could have exposed people for 3 days once you had that test. So you
Right.
should get a negative test result. And that's what we ask our employees as well. If they become, if they're testing and they are symptomatic, they should wait to get a result. And that would definitely stop the spread if they take a test.
Okay.
So my apologies for adding that piece, but I thought that given some last minute conversations with different members of the board and other members of the cabinet, I thought it was important to provide clarity around this point, especially because our numbers continue to rise in the community. And we want to make sure that the community understands the contact tracing process that we are taking as a district. I want to move into the next item, which is the 2021-22 school year calendar proposals. I did something that's a little bit not unorthodox, which is providing two different calendars. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to present to the board the two potential possibilities. I know there was discussion around the March spring break and a conversation about whether we keep the March spring break or we move it back to April. I just want to provide some context. I know part of the rationale behind wanting to keep the April break was because we wanted to stay in alignment with other districts within the vicinity. We looked at the calendars for districts within our circumference that had calendars available. And what we found was that there was no symmetry around the dates that our colleagues have selected as their spring break. There's some districts that have the week of Good Friday as their spring break, and others have the week after. So the concern of setting up a week to help people align vacation with their children if they were attending in other districts does not necessarily work, because some districts have already outlined their calendars for the next 2 years, and they seem to fluctuate between 2 different weeks in April. The rationale behind setting up a March date was that we wanted to ensure that there were no interruptions around the athletic program. We wanted to ensure that we had a smooth transition between the academic work that was being done and state assessments. There was also conversation about the peak of the flu season and having that also as a mitigating rationale for the March break. Given the athletic program, as well as the testing, the state's testing cycle that will probably resume for the 21-22 school year, I recommend the March holiday as the better option because of the fact that it provides the least amount of interruptions around programming for students, both in athletics as well as not creating an interruption for the assessments that happen right after. But I wanted to present the two options to the board, and then during the action component, you can decide how you would like to proceed. Any questions from the board in terms of the calendar?
I don't think this was under actions for today, right? This was just part of the report for us to have discussion.
It was under action for today.
Oh, I saw it on the superintendent's report. Okay.
It's on the superintendent report, and it's also an action item followed.
Okay. So it is unfortunate that the state moved away from a universal calendar because it made it harder for us to align with other districts to help our families who live and work in different districts to manage their vacations and their family time. I did sort of talk to constituents, and there continues to be a concern about the weather in March being cold for those who cannot afford to travel, that it's more pleasant to have the break in April. There was some spring sports families said that actually it would be easier for them to have the break in April because they have baseball camp during the spring break, and it's much easier to do that in April than in March. And I also think that it's a very long slog in terms of burnout from the March break through the middle of June, and possibly longer if we end up adding snow days. And that's very hard on the staff as well as the families. And it is helpful to break up the instructional time into sort of 6 or 7 week chunks so that everyone can take a breather and recharge before the next, big push. So I continue to support an April break, but I'm happy to discuss it with my colleagues.
Yeah, I'll just chime in that I put a lot of thought into this after conversations with Dr. Estrella. And if I'm taking it from the lens of what I've learned as a manager in a business environment, is we have to also be conscious of a people first motivation behind the calendar. And student outcomes are, of course, our top priority. But I do think that there is a correlation between student outcomes and teacher productivity and teacher passion. And in a corporate environment, we are actually forced to take very frequent breaks to recharge, gain new perspective. Otherwise, we lose interest and productivity decreases, and we start to see people missing work because of illnesses, and creativity and innovation, it starts to lag when there's these very long stretches without breaks. So I too am in the camp of the April calendar for that reason.
So I'll just chime in and say, I think that there's clearly very compelling arguments for either calendar, and I think that approving a calendar for the 21-22 year does not mean that we can't revisit it, in future years, and I think that we will still be in a version of education that is not completely normal, right? Let's hope we're as close to it as possible. But we're still going to be reacting in some ways to some of the fallout from our current public health crisis. And so, with that in mind, I'm not seeing the 21-22 calendar as business as usual just yet. And I do think that all else being equal, I think that I would prioritize fewer disruptions in terms of instruction and testing and outcomes for our kids for the 21-22 year, and I would go with Dr. Estrella's recommendation of a March spring break. But that said, Dr. E, unless I'm looking at the wrong agenda, maybe there's an updated one. I don't see this under our actions for tonight. If we do want to vote on it tonight, I'm happy to make a motion to have it added to our actions.
Colin, Sorry to interrupt, but it is under action items, so you might not have the updated one.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong one. Great.
It's action item number 1.
Perfect.
Okay.
Would you like a motion to vote?
Well, we can get to it under action items.
Under action item. Yeah. So the next piece, that is part of the superintendent report, is the PDEC committee. One of the things that I'm hoping to do is to diversify the PDEC committee. So I'm presenting to the board a new group of individuals, some of which that have been in the PDEC committee in the past, and several that are new. Part of what I'm hoping to do is bring in diversity of thinking into the conversation, but also have a PDEC committee that represents Norwalk in terms of the diversity that Norwalk currently has. So in your packet, you would see a list, and I have highlighted the titles and some of the accomplishments of some of the incredible staff members that we have throughout the district that would be great additions to the committee, some of which are nominees from the NFT and NASA bargaining units, and also members that we felt will bring in a perspective in bilingual education, special education, gifted and talented, as well as because of what we're presently living in and the need for us to amplify our thinking around digital learning, also having members in the committee that have that perspective, also including social workers, psychologists into the mix, that I think will bring up a lot of good thinking for professional development around SEL and how to effectively support our students. So I'm hoping that we can vote on this committee, and so that we can begin with the new group in December. And I'm looking forward to amazing work and great thinking because of the diversity of perspective that this new group will bring to the table. Any questions about the membership?
Not a question, more as an observation to say I really am impressed by the diversity of these suggested members, the different backgrounds they bring, and I appreciate everybody willing to step up on this committee. I believe this would be a new action item, Dr. E.
Yes, and I would like to see if you can set a motion to add it to the action items of tonight.
I can certainly try to do that. So regarding the professional development.
Colin, you got muted again.
Yep, got it. The Professional Development and Evaluation Committee. Can I please have a motion to add this to our action items on the agenda tonight?
So moved.
Thank you, Barbara. See Eric seconds. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Perfect. So we can add this to our action items for tonight.
If there are no questions, I'd like to move to the third item in the superintendent report. The third item is the superintendent goals for 2021. These goals were presented to the board as part of my entry plan, for the exception of some modifications around COVID-19 and the work we need to do this year as it relates to COVID-19. I provided the goals to the board. I don't know if the board wishes for me to read them, but I can speak in terms of the emphasis has been around community engagement, getting to meet different constituents within the community, spending a lot of time listening and learning from the different constituents, learning about the things that have been working well, things that we need to continue to improve upon and address, the equity project is one element of the work that we're utilizing, or I'm utilizing, to learn from the community what things we need to continue to look at and stress upon. But also I've engaged in listening and learning conversations alongside board members to learn about the things that have been working well, the things that community members and different constituents within the organization feel we need to continue to have, but also what are the things we need to continue to improve upon and address. And we've had some really robust conversations, and it has provided a lot of insight into the work ahead. Most importantly, my goals talk about the design of a new strategic operating plan for this year so that we can launch the work effectively 21-22. So a lot of that work is underway and will continue to be with an expected draft February of 2021. So I'm really looking forward to the work ahead. I obviously added a COVID goal because of the fact that as I was coming into the district, COVID was just becoming a reality, and it kind of took ammunition as things became more solidified. And a lot of it consists of the reopening plan, the work that we've been doing to ensure the safety and well-being of students, while keeping at the forefront the need to continue to ensure that students are learning day in and day out, and that we're making the best choices for student learning as we work alongside our staff within the scope of the different constituents in the district. So within the packet, I provide an outline of the goals, the expected outcomes, which are, in summary, in collaboration with the different stakeholders, identifying the priorities and direction of Norwalk Public Schools as a result of the listening and learning tour and other engagement and comprehensive summary of the findings, observation, potential next steps will be created, which obviously will be the new strategic operating plan. As part of that. And through that new strategic operating plan, setting up a 5-year plan that will encompass short and long-term goals for us as a collective and to set as priority. In the document, you will find in detail some of the action steps to address every goal so that it is clear that what the expectations are that I've set for myself and the cabinet to support the district as we transition and learn from the work that has been done, as well as learn about the work that needs to be done, while we're also tackling the work that has been as a result of the pandemic, and making sure that we are juggling both items and not allowing one thing to take more priority than the other, because both of them are essential. One, to maintain the work that we need to do now, but most importantly, to keep in mind the work that needs to be done as we move forward and we think about the success that we expect to see in Norwalk as we transition out of this pandemic as well. So any questions from the board around the goals?
I think it is a Herculean task to do all the things that you've laid out for yourself. And we're very excited to see how that plays out for the district. It's obviously a different approach than the previous board took, with more measurable goals related to student outcomes. But I think that especially in this first year, as we are transitioning with many, many changes, it's a really great plan to prioritize understanding the full community and all the different pieces at play. So I appreciate these goals and the thoroughness of your tasks as you've laid them out.
And just to kind of reinforce the fact that the year one, the goals are more process oriented. Obviously, as we design the new strategic operating plan, there will be more quantitative in nature and less qualitative. But this year it's hard to do that because there's a lot of work that's being done to build the platform to do that.
And I will chime in to say that we won't go into all the full detail of the plan, but it is in the public meeting packet that was posted for this meeting, and I encourage everyone to take a look at it. But one of the things that I'm quite encouraged by is that when we think about developing a 5-year plan to take the district into the next foreseeable future, I'm really pleased that that is being informed directly by this listening and learning tour, this engagement with the community that starts with our students and includes the voices from our parents and other parts of our community, including our teachers, other classroom personnel, our staff, and of course the leaders of the district and the senior leadership. So I think for any plan to work, all of those voices have to be heard. And I appreciate the work that Dr. Estrella has done to make sure that happens.
Any other? So I'd like to move to the last element of the superintendent report, which is a quick update on the special education review that will take place with Urban Collaborative at ASU. And I'm going to have Yvette Gurovich speak on behalf of the cabinet on this item.
Thank you. Congratulations to the new executive committee. Thank you for your time and service. Just brief history: 2008, 2011, 2015, more than a decade of special education audits that revealed serious deficits and operational inefficiencies, concerns about fiscal planning, as well as the implementation of supports and services to students with disabilities. That decade of reports led the city and the Board of Education to create a 3-year, $3.6 million special education redevelopment fund. That fund sunset, as you know, in 2019, and it is now time for an independent review to determine the progress, as well as to set areas for future growth and continuous development. At the direction of the Board of Education, an RFP was developed to complete that review. I do want to thank the review committee, Eric Niedera, parent and member of the ad hoc committee, David Uhlman, parent and chair of the NSPEDPAC, our Parents Advisory Council, Sandra Fayos, Director of School Improvement, Kristen Karsmit, Director of Finance, Dr. Stacy Hyland-Gantola, Director of Pupil Services, and Karen Bartram, Purchasing Agent, who assisted us and guided us through this process. After a review of the proposals, the committee unanimously agreed to award the project to complete the comprehensive review of special education processes, supports, and services to the Urban Collaborative at Arizona State University. Urban Collaborative submitted a very robust proposal and responded to the over 100 items in the RFP that had been included, all the items from the previous CREC reports, as well as numerous additional items that were requested to be reviewed with input from the ad hoc committee. The Urban Collaborative has completed numerous reviews at a national level, as well as several in the tri-state area. The review with the findings and recommendations will be completed and presented to the Board of Education in February to further inform our budget preparation and the new strategic operating plan. I'm looking forward to the findings of growth and improvement since the 2015 CREC report, as well as the recommendations to guide the district's service delivery in the next 3 to 5 years. So thank you all for your support and patience in this work.
I would like to thank Erica as well for all of her hard work leading the ad hoc committee. So Erica, thank you to you as well.
Oh, and thanks to the board for, when we were going through the superintendent search, this entire board put such emphasis on the importance of SPED and, making sure that we had a superintendent that supported the specialized learning department. And I think we saw that right out of the gate. So I am very thankful for you all for getting on board.
Thank you. You guys did an incredible job. I'm really excited about the outcomes of this review, and it's going to be another piece of data that we can use to really inform our strategic operating plan moving forward. So Erica and the rest of the team, Yvette, thank you for an amazing job in this work. Before I conclude my superintendent report, I'd like to end with thanking our teachers. Our teachers are working tirelessly every day in, day out, to make sure that our students succeed with technical difficulties and learning how to utilize new devices and new programs, and not feeling fully satisfied every day because there's 1,000 things that they have to do to ensure that our students are learning and getting the best possible education. And like I said to them a week ago, they are our heroes, and they will continue to be through this pandemic. And I think that they don't get enough credit many times for the amazing work that they do. And I just want them to know that we understand how difficult it is to teach, whether you are a first-year teacher or a veteran teacher. The work is not easy, and we know it. But we also understand that you are doing your very best every day to ensure that our kids are succeeding. And at least what I expect is that you give it your best every day, because we're not looking for perfection under these circumstances. I've had the opportunity to visit many of the teachers in their classrooms, and I am impressed every single time. They might not think that what they're doing is phenomenal, but I personally think that they are doing a phenomenal job of making sure that our students are successful in the midst of all of this. In the same way, I want to thank our nurses, because like Joanne Malinowski said, they're working 7 days a week, nonstop. And they never say no. They pick up the phone at any point in time. And it's just been a blessing to be part of such an amazing community of educators throughout the district, because even our paras have been extremely phenomenal in the classroom, supporting and working alongside of our teachers. So just thank you for all you do. And I just wanted to recognize them today, because they are our heroes day in, day out. And that concludes the superintendent report.
Very well said, Dr. Estrella. Yes, our hats off to our teachers, our nurses, all our classroom staff. You're doing it. I don't know how, but you are. Okay, so we can move ahead now to actions. Starting with the consent calendar, and as a reminder, the consent calendar allows us to move multiple items at once. Tonight's consent calendar includes the approval of personnel and the approval of budget transfers. And if anybody wants to make a motion to move the consent calendar, I will see that. Barbara, thank you. Is there a second? Sarah, thank you. Any discussion about the consent calendar, the personnel or budget transfers?
I just want to clarify, I don't see the calendar included on the consent calendar.
You mean the academic?
Just transfers and the personnel motions.
I think that there was an updated agenda. Is that right?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not on
there's
there either.
It's not on there. Diana, what were you looking at before?
We can have it we can have it for discussion and as an action item in December.
I think that would be excellent if we could table it. Thank you.
Given what people have discussed, I think it just makes sense. I don't know. I might be overstepping here. So.
That may be appropriate, because yes, the agenda that I have does not have it on tonight's agenda, and if we can wait for our next business meeting, that may allow us to have more conversation about it.
Okay.
My only discussion on the personnel is my regret that we're losing some great people. to retirement, and thanking them for their long service and the gift of them, their livelihoods to our community.
You know, and I'll just take a moment to just acknowledge that there is sped turnover in that personnel list, and Yvette and I, and Dr. Estrella and I are very close on those items, and there is a plan in place to address those, some of which have already been filled.
Perfect. Is there any further discussion on the consent calendar? Seeing none, all in favor of the consent calendar, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Unanimous passing, and we can move on to item number 3, the approval of superintendent goals and expected outcomes for 2020 to 2021. Can I have a motion to get that discussion going? Barbara, thank you. A second. Erica, thank you. Is there any discussion about the goals and outcomes for the superintendent for this academic year?
Again, it's just really the focus on process over product, which may end up giving us a better product if we're lucky and we play our cards right.
Absolutely, and I do want to acknowledge and I appreciate Dr. E. You know, we hired her at a time when nobody really saw exactly how this year was going to go, and I really appreciate how she's been able to adapt and think about her goals and outcomes in the context of COVID. If there's no further discussion on this, I will call for a vote. All in favor of the superintendent's goals and outcomes, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Perfect. Moving on to the approval to appoint Ms. Donalda Chumney, as Chief Academic Officer. If I can get a motion to get that on the floor.
Moved.
Heidi, thank you. Seconded by Diana. Any discussion on Ms. Chumney?
She's in the group. I don't know if if you would like to introduce her, but we can.
Is she here?
Yeah, she's here.
If you don't mind, Colin, I would just like to take a chance to say that when we had the opportunity to speak with her, I was so impressed by her experience and thoughtfulness and intelligence and sense of process and holistic sense of systems. And I really think she's a fantastic addition to the team. So,
Ralph, can you elevate her? Oh, there she is.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to get to know you all better, hopefully, and to work with you.
Wonderful. I think the feeling is very mutual. And so without further ado, I'm going to call for a vote to approve the appointment of Ms. Chumney as Chief Academic Officer. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Welcome to Norwalk, Ms. Chumney.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Thanks. Terrific.
She's actually moving to Norwalk, so she will be a Norwalker.
I am so ready for recommendations on every possible aspect of life and really, really excited about the whole transition. So thank you so much for being so welcoming and gracious.
Welcome, and we've got you.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure you'll get lots of recommendations. Perfect. Wonderful. Moving on. Item number 5, the approval of educational specs for asbestos abatement project at Silver Mine. If I can get a motion to bring that to the floor. I see Barbara and Erica seconds. Any discussion about this agenda item?
Just to say how welcome it is. I know it's been several years since the issue was brought to our attention, and I'm glad it's getting done.
I will second that emotion. I know that at the facilities meeting, it was positioned as something that would be very routine and it should not cause any issues. So I'm happy to move this forward. If there's no further discussion, I will go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor of the asbestos abatement proposal at Silver Mine, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Moving right along to number 6, the approval of drawings and final cost estimates for Jefferson Elementary School State Project. We can move this to the floor. Barbara, seconded by Sarah. Any discussion about the Jefferson State Project?
If you don't mind, just that in Facilities Committee, we had the opportunity to very thoroughly speak with everyone involved and go through, and I don't want to speak for everyone else in the committee. You were also there, but I think we're pretty satisfied and happy with changes that had been made in between the first iteration and the second iteration that we saw.
I would second that and just say this is such a long time coming. It's been 15 years since the community felt that we needed to move trailers and get this building state of the art. And I'm so excited that we're moving forward. I want to thank Jim in particular for his hard work. It's a tricky site and you guys have done a great job.
Yes, I do want to thank the entire team. Jim is here, Alan is here, Michael, the architects. And so I do want to open it up if anybody on the board has questions for any of the building team. I'm sure they would love to answer. And that's how thorough your presentation is, Alan. No questions. Seeing no further discussion, I will call for a vote on this. All in favor of the Jefferson project, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Full steam ahead with Jefferson. Better late than never. Thank you all. Okay, moving right along.
I just want to know something that I think something needs to be signed at some point, so we'll forward to you, right, Jim?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah, we do have a form for the chairman of the Board of Education and the superintendent to sign off on. That will be for a final plan review meeting with the state in December.
Thank you.
I'll distribute that form to everyone this week.
Great, thank you so much. And that allows us to move forward to number 7, the approval of revised design specs for Norwalk High School / PTech / Arts Academy. If I can move this to the floor, I would take a motion. Sarah, any second? Erica. Any discussion about the revised design specs for Norwalk High School?
Do you mind if I ask a question, Colin?
Of course.
In this discussion, so at Facilities, we did provisionally move this item to the full board with the understanding that discussions would be had that involved members of the building leadership for PTech and Norwalk High School and the proposed Arts High School as well. And so I wonder if we can get sort of a temperature or a report on any of that has happened in between now and then. It was a short amount of time, I know, in between our meeting and now, but.
So I can speak to that, Sarah, if you don't mind. So we had on Monday a conversation with different constituents from the state just to gain clarity in terms of how much latitude we had in terms of the actual design of the floor plan, given the restriction of the 328,000 square feet that we are working with. And the understanding that we left from that conversation is that the actual design specs can continue to be modified within those that square footage. We then followed that conversation with the principals. Alan Lowe, Jim, and other constituents were part of that conversation to start having the insight of our school leaders and addressing some of their concerns in terms of their programmatic needs. We will have ongoing dialogue with the school leaders and different members of the team that are helping with the design of the specs to ensure that their voices are heard and their concerns are addressed. So after, depending on how things go tonight, after the approval, we still have latitude in readjusting the internal configuration of the building. And one of the things that I've discussed is the possibility of instead of having an art academy within the campus, making the arts focus a pathway within Norwalk High School. By doing that, we have more flexibility in terms of how we can work with the square footage to satisfy the needs of PTech as well as the Norwalk High program alongside the arts pathway. So this is something that we will have more ongoing conversations with the two leaders and the other members of the team that will be working around the redesign. Well, not the redesign, but the continual adjustment of the floor plan to make sure that we're satisfying the needs of the program with the feedback of the principals and other constituents within the different school communities.
I just want to say to my colleagues and for the community that has emailed us, my colleagues know that I have pelted Dr. Estrella and Dr. Costanzo and Mr. Hamilton with a lot of questions around Norwalk High School. And I want to thank Dr. Estrella. She's carves out office hours for us on every turn, starting at 7 a.m. in the morning in my case. And I think that what she said in the latitude and the commitment to a continued conversation with stakeholders is why I'm moving this forward. I trust in that. She's acknowledged all of the points that I've brought up. She's committed to following through on those responses, some of which, you know, she had quick answers for. And I just want to thank you for having that open dialogue with us and for the community for raising questions. We do see your emails and the superintendent does engage with us on the follow-ups to those.
And just two additional things. I know there was concerns about the pool. The state assured us that that is moving forward. And I'm going to hold them to all the commitments that they made on Monday, which is the ability to redesign and adjust the needs of the two schools. So just note that I will be holding them to their word and the conversations we've had, because I really want to make sure that the two communities are heard in terms of what they want to make sure that the programs flourish.
And I wanted to offer a clarification, and I just saw you, Mike. I'll come to you next. Particularly for the folks who offered public comment tonight. I know, and from the many constituents we've heard from, in terms of just the process of this, and Alan's here, he may be able to shed some more light. In terms of the timing of tonight's vote, and why we're being asked to vote on this tonight and perhaps not delay it. It's, as I understand it, and Alan, I'll ask you to just confirm in a second, it's part of what may be described as a bit of a bureaucratic process at the state level where it needs to be approved, and then the minutes of that approval approved at the subsequent meeting, all before the end of this calendar year. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just to clarify in terms of the process, what it does not mean is that after tonight's approval, if it were to go through, there is no room for any continuing tweaks and updates. Is that correct? Meaning that there is room if there are, if we continue to get feedback from the stakeholders, including the building leaders and our community, if we are able to make certain tweaks and adjustments to the design specs, that is still possible. Is that correct?
That is correct, Colin. I'm sorry, I'm answering for Alan. I was on that meeting on Monday morning in which the state did confirm that, yes, we do have latitude within the square foot area and the budget that we have to make adjustments to those ed specs as necessary.
Thanks for confirming that, Jim. So I wanted to make sure that just for my own benefit, but also for the public, that I think while it may seem that this vote is coming up at a time when there are still open questions, part of that is just part of the bureaucratic requirements at the state level. And so it does not mean that the conversation does not continue.
So can I ask Colin?
I just saw Mike and then Dr. Reed.
Yeah, so for the record, I'm actually going to vote against these ed specs. If you recall, I was the former chair of the facilities committee and oversaw the master plan that was developed, which Norwalk High School was not on. I know things change, but once we vote on these ed specs, we transfer responsibility of this project to the city side. The Board of Ed, we're done. And while there can be some input and some changes can be made within that footprint, the fact is legally it is out of our hands. And so we're passing the baton, so to speak. And I think we got some very interesting emails today, questioning things, especially with regards to PTech, which is the whole justification behind this project. This whole project is riding on PTech, and yet they're having classrooms taken away, space taken away, and maybe the space can get reallocated, but it is out of the Board of Ed's hands. And this is what we're giving our blessing to. And I'm personally unwilling to give my blessing to the plan as is presented in these ed specs. I just wanted to explain my vote.
Thanks, Mike. Sorry, Dr. E, you were going to say?
What I was going to say is that according to what the state articulated on Monday, the approval today is based on the desire to move forward with the project, but that there's continued room within the 328,000 square feet to redesign the plan based on some of the recommendations of the leadership alongside their community. So I'm going to hold them to their word and make sure that the communities have the opportunity to have these conversations. I've spoken with Jim and Alan about how we can rethink this. I think we have a plan now. If we shift the concept of the Arts Academy to really ensure that both programs are successful and that they have the adequate space to do so.
Yes, Sherelle?
So when we vote tonight to move it forward, are we able to come back perhaps next month to talk about the specifics? Or is this it?
My understanding is that we can bring it back for a discussion. I don't know that it would require an additional vote from the board, but we can add anything for a discussion on the agenda.
And I'm just thinking to your point that you made at the facilities meeting, having the input of the two principals, and just to make sure that everybody is happy, with the new design.
So I can provide an update in December. We can also have the principals join the next facilities meeting to speak about some of their recommendations and where they are with those recommendations as well. So I will keep the board actively informed of where we are with the recommendations of the principals and their committee and their schools to ensure that their voices are heard and that the programs have viable spaces to work in after the new construction is complete.
Right.
If
So
I can just check, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Sherelle.
okay. Just one question. I just want to play angel's advocate. So just say, we approve it and just say people are unhappy with whatever design or whatever modifications are made, then what happens?
When you say people, who are you referring to?
I'm thinking of the school community and the people who emailed to ask us to delay the vote and, or basically pool community?
Well, those are the people we're going to work with to redesign. So I'm hoping that after all of the conversations, that's no longer the case. I've been in conversation with, well, obviously we had the conversation with the principals. I had a follow-up conversation today with Principal Amaker, and we are going to make sure that they're part of the process. And we can have them come and talk about where they are in the process, if you wish, at the next board meeting, as well as the facilities meeting, so that the board feels reassured that their voices were heard in conjunction with some of the programmatic needs. Are we going to completely satisfy people?
We know that's not going to.
I don't know if that's possible, but we will make sure that.
Yeah, we know that that's not the case. It was just a question playing angel's advocate, because there is that possibility.
Absolutely.
I trust you. I definitely trust you when you say their voices are going to be heard. So thank you for that.
Heidi and then Sarah.
Yeah, just quickly, I think, Dr. E, you've answered some of the questions I have, but I think having Ms. Amaker and Mr. Roberts, speak, whether it comes to the facilities committee meeting, also to the board meeting, our next meeting, I think that's helpful for the community to hear, but also for us as board members as well. And I think just keeping that open dialogue going, I think is really important. And also another question, and as well as getting the community involved, but the pool, we've had issues in the past, maybe I'm talking years ago, opening the pool, closing the pool, renovating the pool, building it as new. And definitely that's almost the heartbeat of our community in Norwalk, having the pool at Norwalk High School, which makes us very unique and is really, really important. So can you just talk a little bit more? I know you touched upon it, but a little bit more about the specs, or Jim might be able to, in regards to the pool at Norwalk High School?
So Jim, you want to talk about that?
Sure. We are including the pool as what we call an ad alternate. This, I think everybody has to understand, this is a very preliminary step in the process. We have engaged consultants and architect really just to look at the site relative to the size of the building, and does it fit on the site? Does it fit where we want to put it? And can we do this? So once that's done, then we gave it to a professional cost estimator who has to make certain assumptions, because we don't have all the details at this point. So he may be a little conservative in their pricing. So until we get to know how we're moving forward and we get a firm design after we do some preliminary testing of the site, find out where the utilities are and how we can place this building and how we can move forward, it gives us a much better idea of where our options are in terms of saving money and being able to include the pool. So when we go out for architectural services, which I'm hoping is going to be this winter, we're going to include the pool as part of their responsibility to design. We're moving forward as if the pool is in there and is going to be a part of this project. And again, as that design gets refined, we have a much better idea of where we stand budget-wise. And it also gives a challenge to the architectural firms or architectural firm that gets selected, in that they have to design to a budget that also includes the pool. We're going to challenge them on that. I do think, moving forward with the pool as an ad alternate is just a safe way to do it at this point.
Jim, Sarah?
And I think one of the questions, Jim, that came up prior to the meeting was around the reimbursement. What percent reimbursement we would get for the construction of the pool? I don't know if you can quickly just mention that, because that question came up.
We get 50% of the of our reimbursement rate. So 50% of 80%, 40%, which is much higher reimbursement rate than we would normally get on something of that nature.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Sarah?
For sure. So I was also just going to say that I think it's important to remind everybody what you had said, Colin, at the beginning of this discussion, which is that procedurally, bureaucratically, if we don't vote to move this forward now, nothing will ever happen. The project will not be able to move forward because it's not the sort of thing, as far as I understand, where we will get another chance if we delay this piece of the process. And also, in my experience on facilities committee, I think the public understanding of what ed specs and design specs are is sometimes much more concrete than they actually are, which is also, I think, a helpful point of clarification for people that we did not look at blueprints or plans for an actual physical plant and say, this is this and this is this. These are, it's a much less definite stage of planning than I think is understood in the public sphere of discussion that's happening. I think that the idea has been put forth that things are in a different place than they are, if that makes sense. And I don't know, I hope that's helpful.
No, I think it is helpful, Sarah. I think for me at least, it sometimes feels counterintuitive to be voting on something that still has so much to be fleshed out. But again, it's important to remember that that is partly because of a timing requirement at the state level, and the fact that there is that much to be fleshed out. And Jim, as Jim said, a lot of these costs are based on a very conservative model. Gives me a lot of hope. I want to, I know this has been a hot topic for discussion, but I want to remind folks that this has the potential to go very, very well, right? I mean, I think it's easy to see the ways it can go, it cannot, right? Which is kind of true of most things. But if it does, I mean, we have the potential to have a marquee high school at Norwalk High School with great programs, both at PTech and at the Arts Academy, however that is integrated. And I think getting there will take cooperative work, right, on the board side, but as Mike said, also on the city side and at the state level. So it is very much collaborative, and I don't see that any one of these stakeholders is giving up control. We have to kind of work together for it to work. So it's been a robust discussion. I want to make sure everybody has had their voice heard. Is there any other discussion on this?
Colin?
Go ahead, Diana.
I just want the public to know, and both Principal Roberts and Principal Amaker to know that we are listening. Everybody has been reading the emails, having conversations, even walking into this meeting. We are still having discussions, asking questions. There's a lot going on. I also wanted to make the comment that I know in the meetings we've discussed planning, but with current enrollment. And for me, it's very important that they take into consideration that PTech is going to grow. That was a big conversation, that they were going to add students. Students were coming from different districts. So if we can add that to the timeline and the specs of how many classrooms, the number of teachers that they're going to have to hire, and things like that. So for me, it's not just current enrollment, it's the growth of that school in the next few years.
Thank you, Diana. I think that's a great point. We're thinking about this not just for now or in the next couple of years, but pretty much almost for like a generation to come. So we have to think about how it will grow and evolve with the community. If there's no additional discussion, I will ask us to go ahead and vote on this. All in favor of moving forward with the revised ed specs at Norwalk High, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? One opposed, Mike, thank you. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you everyone for a very good discussion. I know it's there's a lot to pay attention to here, and I really appreciate the work that everybody has put into it so far. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, the entire team.
You're welcome.
And that allows us to move on now to number 8, the approval of salaries and compensation plans for non-union certified and non-certified senior management, and authorizations of the superintendent to implement aspects of the plan in 2020. Can we move this to the floor for discussion? Thank you, Diana. Seconded by Godfrey.
Dr. Estrella, I just want to say thank you for including some of the background to this action item from the 2017 minutes, just to give kind of light about as to why. And I just wanted to ask if you could just kind of further speak to the why now, just so the public is clear.
So as you articulated, Godfrey, the 2017 document was for 3 years, providing a scope of the % increase for non-union staff. And it was due for an update, and we needed to update the information using comparables of the current principal salaries in particular, as a gauge to measure what the new range would be. And we utilize 5% above the current principal salary as the tool we assess to determine the range for the salaries of the chiefs for the next 3 years, or at least a range of what the salaries could be for the next 3 years.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella. And yes, again, just again for clarification for anyone who is wondering about where this came from, this was a compensation structure that was approved by the board 3 years ago, is now due for sort of a reapproval, an update. And again, it's a great opportunity to, as we said earlier, to acknowledge our teachers and classroom staff. It's a great opportunity to acknowledge some of the senior leadership of the Norwalk School District. I don't think I need to tell everybody what strides we've made as a district in the last 5 to 10 years, and that's that's been a cooperative effort, right? We've had great board members, great teachers and classroom staff, great parents, students, community, and we've had great district leadership, and that includes the senior leadership. And many of them are here tonight. They're working hard. They're working a lot behind the scenes. They're answering questions from board members. They are holding themselves accountable, not just to our community, but most importantly to our students. And they don't probably hear it a lot, but we do appreciate it. Is there any further discussion on this? If not, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you again to everyone, and that completes the action items for tonight, so we can move ahead with information and reports.
We moved one action item, which was
I'm sorry,
number 9.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. We did move earlier to add one action item, which was to approve the Professional Development and Evaluation Committee as proposed by Dr. Ian, the Superintendent's report. Barbara moves that to the floor, seconded by Heidi. Is there any further discussion on that particular item? Seeing none, should we go ahead and vote? All in favor of approving the committee members, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Perfect. Thank you for that reminder. That concludes our action items for tonight, which allows us to move on to information and reports, starting with the October monthly financial report. And take it away, Mr. Hamilton.
Good evening, board members. You have the monthly financial report in your packet. Just to hit some of the highlights, we are 33% of the way through the fiscal year and 20% of the way through the school year. We have spent approximately 21% of our budget, or $43 million at this point. It is about 9% less than what we had spent at the same time last year, but there's two major reasons for that variance compared to last year. One, the fringe benefit account is running about $2.2 million below last year's level because of the fact of the way the city controller, it's a timing issue in terms of when the city controller charges the district budget as a contribution to the insurance fund. Last year, it was charged out 3 times during the course of the year, and this year it's set up as a quarterly charge, so that accounts for the variance this year. And secondly, you'll see a variance in the 500 series of accounts, which is other services. The biggest item there is really the transportation contract with our school bus vendor. And there you'll see our total expenses year to date are about 1.6 million as of this October, compared to 6.7 million as of last October. And that variance is primarily attributed to the fact that the new school bus contract does not provide for a prepayment discount. Previously, the district paid most of the annual school bus contract upfront and received a discount for doing so, but the new contract that we put in place has us making regular monthly payments. And so that's why there's a timing difference there. In terms of some of the accounts that we're monitoring, substitute accounts, particularly some of the long-term substitute accounts are running higher than expected, which is, we believe, primarily COVID related, with teachers who have taken family medical leave, and we've had to backfill positions with long-term substitutes. But there will be some savings in the regular wage accounts that will be available to cover those expenses. The overall, the wage accounts are running about pretty much right where we would expect them to at this point during the year. The benefit account I've already spoken about. Unemployment, I should indicate, although at this point, as of October, we're not showing any unemployment expenses yet paid for this year, but we do understand that we are experiencing, or we will be billed later in the year for unemployment expenses, which are running higher than normally would be the case. And again, that also appears to be pretty much a COVID related issue with former employees who may have been laid off from their primary job or their successor job, but we pay a portion of the unemployment as a direct reimbursement employer. So we are monitoring those expenses and watching those expenses. I do believe we'll probably need to transfer some money into the unemployment account later in the year. The repair and maintenance accounts also are running a bit higher than last year. In the 430 account, we've expended about 47% of the budget there. And that is, again, related to COVID and also additional expenses in the IT department. At this point, though, we do believe we'll be able to cover any shortfall there from elsewhere, other non-wage accounts within the district budget. Our supply accounts are actually running a bit under at this point, and many of these are in the school budgets, and we think it may be partly a timing issue and partly a fact that COVID has caused so many different things to sort of happen in the schools. They may be behind in ordering supplies and so forth, but Again, we expect as we continue through the year, those expenses will come up back up to normal levels. And I think that pretty much covers the major major items that we see at this point in the budget. As we'd indicated to the Finance Committee, the City Board of Estimate and Taxation this month did approve the carryover of funds. The 2% carryover of funds was approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation. 1.5 million of that amount is being used to support the regular district operating budget for 2020-21, and about $2.4 million of that carryover is being used to cover extraordinary COVID expenses, particularly in the second half of the year after the state COVID grant has expired. But at this point, we believe we're in a reasonably good place, and we don't believe at this point we're going to need to go back to the city for additional appropriations this year at this point. So if there's any questions, happy to try to answer them.
Thanks, Tom. I did have one question that I forgot to ask at our Finance Committee meeting, which is just regarding the 600 series, particularly things like electricity and oil and gas and so on. Do you think that as different buildings go into either into temporary remote learning over the next few weeks and months, do you think that will have any meaningful impact on like energy bills and so on?
Well, our experience when we were in full distance learning over the last spring was that we saw a noticeable reduction in utility expenses as a result of that shutdown. At this point, the buildings are open, and so I don't think that, so long as we're in a hybrid mode, I don't think we're going to see a material change one way or the other. But the good news is that we recently, actually today, with the city, went out for competitive pricing on electricity. Our current electricity contract expires at the end of December, and we went out through a competitive process with the city, and we'll be basically entering into a new contract at about 11% reduction from our current electricity rates. And we'll be able to lock in those rates for a 4-year period. So it's very, very favorable electricity pricing that we're going to be able to lock in now. So that was, I believe, is projected to save us about $160,000 a year in electricity. And so we're certainly happy to see that. And heating oil prices and natural gas prices are also quite favorable at this point. So I think overall, we're expecting our energy accounts to be a source of some favorable budget year-end result for us.
Great, we'll take it. Any other questions on the October financials? Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Tom. Moving on to committee and representative reports. Anybody want to go first?
I can go if that's helpful.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay. Well, I'll let Colin, you can report on finance, but I think we already just saw the fruits of that labor. The PTOC is meeting. They had unfortunately had to cancel their meeting due to the power outages, and they are meeting on December 7th at 7 p.m. and their treasurer, Shiloh Martin Adams, is doing a great job of trying to renegotiate rates for the PTOs on insurance, given that many parent volunteers aren't in the building. So that's wonderful news. And I want to congratulate my colleague, Godfrey Azima, who is joining the implementation team for the Norwalk Acts initiative, which I think is a wonderful move. He's proven himself to be so resourceful and great at building relationships across the city entities. They do want to, Norwalk Acts would like to make folks aware that the monthly youth town halls will return in January. Also a reminder that the Social Justice and Racial Equity Workshop Series is this week and then also in December, and the dates are on their website. They encourage people to participate in the next quarterly convening on December 15th from 9 to 11. They'll vote on their wonderful new board, honor Anthony Allison's long service, and have a discussion with community members and elected officials at the local and state level about policy and advocacy work. They are also partnering with Temple University to continue to identify youth and parents for participation in the focus groups related to the Equity and Education Project. And that is it for them. So I think that's me. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Heidi's in your update from policy.
Sorry, I try to be really good about muting myself, so I apologize for that. Our next meeting will be December 1st, and we are going to look at a social media policy, which we have for students, but we need to expand that more. So we will be looking at that through a different lens and seeing how we can work on that and again, expand that. We have a lot of policies coming down the pike for December, January, and February. So I'm in continuous contact with Dr. Costanzo on what we'll be setting up for our next couple of agendas for policy. So we will be busy the next couple of months.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Curriculum, Sherelle, is there an update? Uh-oh, did we lose Sherelle?
I can go while she's reconnecting.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the ad hoc SPED committee, as we've mentioned previously, is in the next phase of moving through the RFP process, which will start with interviews with not only the NSPED PAC committee and the ad hoc SPED committee, but it also, after we get through that round of interviews, it will move to community focus groups. I do want to just take a second. I know I always say how wonderful the ad hoc SPED committee is, but I'll just acknowledge them by name very quickly. Eric Meteor, Kelly Dominic, Marissa Mangone, Emily Hare, Anthony Sarnelli, Principal Shaheen, Melanie Fife, Amy Hodges, Barbara. Sarah serves as our executive sponsor, David Hubelman, who participated in the RFP bid process, and all of those who also contribute via the NSPED PAC through Amy, Marissa, who serve on both committees. All of these folks, they're parents, they're teachers, they're principals in the district, and they're adding another 2 hours of their day every month to contribute to this process, sometimes more. So I just want to take a moment to thank them for their contributions to this process. From an athletic liaison perspective, the fall season has concluded. As Dr. Estrella mentioned, our winter seasons have been pushed back, and I want to take this opportunity to again thank the coaches who went above and beyond to keep the health and safety of our student athletes at the forefront of the fall season. We did have a great conclusion to many of the programs. Amanda Graham, specifically on the McMahon All-State cross-country team, had an all honors, all-state recognition. This is the first time it's occurred since 1990. Our McMahon boys soccer team shared the Central Division Soccer Championship with Wilton after a double overtime 0-0 tie score. This is the first time This is the first time soccer championship for our for Brian McMahon since the 80s. So congratulations to all our fall athletes, and we look forward to seeing you on the courts or in the pools in January.
Thanks, Erica. Sarah did have to log off, but I just want to a quick update on facilities. We obviously discussed a lot of that tonight, but just to say that we also appointed a representative from the board to the Cranberry Building Committee, and I assume we will be going forward on Norwalk High with a committee that involves members from and stakeholders from the community and the building leadership. Am I forgetting anybody? I might well be. Okay.
Personnel.
Oh, personnel.
Maybe Godfrey or Heidi could report.
I mean, there's nothing to report.
Okay.
We'll take no news as good news. Thank you. Which allows us to move on to board member announcements. Any of my colleagues have anything fun or interesting they want to share with our community?
I'm excited to be chairing a task force at the state level regarding the feasibility of undirected play during the elementary school day. And we've been waiting patiently for COVID to give us the circumstances to get to work. And it looks like that's moving forward this month. So I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Can I add something, Colin? I first of all wanted to congratulate our new executive team members, Colin, Diana, and Godfrey. I think you three of you will make a dynamic team. So we're looking forward to working with all three of you on the exec team. And also I wanted to thank Godfrey and Sarah the past year working very collaboratively together and really a kind of a team effort. And I appreciate all the hard work that everybody has put in over the past year, considering everything that we're going through with COVID. So kudos to staff, central office, all of our teachers, all of our staff members. We know how hard that you've been working and how challenging these times are. So very appreciative of that. And Godfrey, I was thinking spotlight. I wish that we could just spotlight everyone in Norwalk Public Schools. So it certainly has, we know that everybody has really risen to the occasion during these challenging times.
Heidi, your time on the executive team is very, very much appreciated. 11 years, is that accurate, Heidi? 11 years?
11 years, yeah, sure.
You know, your commitment, you know, things you've gone through simultaneous to those times. Thank you. You know, is the least I can say. You know, the collective wisdom you allowed me to tap into this year will be missed. Our dynamic, me, you, and Sarah was great. You know, and I'm confident that Colin, Diana, and I will continue to carry that torch together with the board. Thank you, Heidi.
I'm sure. Thank you. And I'm only a Zoom call, right? Zoom away or a phone call away. So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Careful what you wish for.
I do recall that, yes.
Well, on that note, I just want to reiterate that I said it earlier, but I do have great gratitude to not just Sarah and Heidi and Godfrey, who's continuing on the executive committee, but for all my fellow board members. We know that these are positions of public service. We are accountable to our constituents. We are accountable to our students and our learning community. And we know that we hope that you will continue to keep us honest. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we pledge to continue doing our very best to do what's right by our schools. And so if there are no other board member announcements, we can move on to the final item, which is the approval of the minutes from the October 20th meeting. If somebody could move that to the floor. Barbara, thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Godfrey. Any discussion or changes to the minutes?
No.
No.
I just want to make one clarification, which is Harry Rilling is listed under the attendance as an NPS staff member. He should be listed as an ex officio board member. Other than that, if there are no other changes, I will call it for a vote. All in favor of the October 20th minutes, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Mike abstains. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I wasn't at that meeting.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you everyone for a productive meeting, great discussion. Again, we appreciate the work that everyone is putting into some challenging times. We have to actually move to, is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Okay. Diana and Barbara. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
We are hereby adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations.
Colin.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.